morning, everybody. Welcome back to C3 Summit. I want to thank you for your participation yesterday, and we're looking forward to another great day today. We will begin with Immunicom and our keynote speaker, Mr. Amir Jafri, and we will be sharing perspectives on issues that shape healthcare tech innovation, as you will hear from Immunicom, also artificial intelligence, medical care during COVID, the importance of building leadership, entrepreneurial excellence, and knowledge transfer regarding the new global technologies that impact our healthcare diplomacy between our two regions. So with that, I'd like to now introduce Immunicom and thank you again for your participation.
Nobody ever imagines that treating cancer can be painless.
Or that it could be affordable.
Or that I could be treated without worrying about side effects.
And while I'm defeating cancer, I can live a normal life.
Well, at Immunicom, we do.
Thank you for that, good morning or good afternoon or evening to all of our participants, depending on where you are and in our world. One thing about this topic, it's a bit of a struggle because we are in the healthcare industry, and when you talk about revolution or revolutionizing something, usually that entails that you're gonna upset the apple cart a little bit. You're going to potentially change the rules. And in healthcare, obviously, that the challenge is we are in a highly regulated environment, and for the good, obviously, for the benefit of patient safety, for the benefit of making sure that we don't have individuals out there taking advantage of human beings that are vulnerable. We have to have a highly and tightly regulated environment. At the same time, the challenge becomes, well, then how do you truly innovate, and not just innovate, but as the title says, how do you revolutionize innovation? Innovation has happened in healthcare since the beginning of humanity. At some times, it's been the pace has been significantly greater than at other times. And particularly if you look at the 20th century, there were significant innovations in discoveries in basic sciences, significant innovations in our understanding of diagnostic type of sciences. If you go back even before that, during the time of the Islamic empires, there was huge innovations in surgery and other type of healthcare sciences. Fast forward to modern times, and what you have is you have an environment over the last 30 years where there's been rapid innovation, rapid discovery. I should rephrase it. It's more been rapid discovery on our understanding of the human body and how things work. But that still doesn't tell you how do you institutionalize the concept of innovation. How do you do that? And I can tell you this, as somebody who's been innovating almost all of his life, there's no formula. There's no, I know people write books that teach you how to innovate. The challenge is that if it were that easy, that if you could just follow a book, if you could follow step 1, step 2, step 3, all of us would innovate. Every country would be an innovative leader. Yet that doesn't happen. Every individual will be an innovative leader, and that doesn't happen. Innovation is more of a, I guess the best way to put it is a culture. Innovation is something that is a mindset. Part of healthcare's challenge, for example, is, well, where will the next innovation, what will the next revolution happen? And will it be in AI? Will it be in telemedicine? Will it be in IoT and wearables, robotics, and some of the things that Ransel mentioned will be discussed today in the conference. The list goes on and on. Wellness, gene therapy, immunotherapies in oncology and other diseases. It doesn't matter, honestly. It doesn't matter where the innovation is. So it's not as if you can go in any one of these areas and say, okay, here's the focus. But regardless of where the innovation is, one thing that's critical for innovation is you have to have a desire. Whatever the organization, an individual, a group, a country, you must have a passion. You must have a passion to change things and to change things for the better. And because without that, there's no reason to innovate. We're perfectly fine where we are. But our desire as human beings to constantly make things better, to go to that next step where we improve on what we have. And in some cases, we solve problems, in many cases, that nobody else has solved. You have to have a passion for that. If you don't, then you're not an innovator. You cannot be, well, I'm going to make a better car. I'm going to make a better phone, which is necessary in many cases for markets, but that's not innovation. That's not where transformative things happen in healthcare, or actually in any industry for that matter. So, there are very good books. You could read The Innovator's Dilemma by Christian Claytonson, and Good to Great, and there's a whole bunch of books that help you kind of think in a way on how innovation should happen. But ultimately, it comes down to the desire to make things better. Now, and obviously, for those of us who are in healthcare, that desire stems from helping people. I can tell you why Immunicom, the video that you saw of my company, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder of that company. I can tell you why that company was formed. That company was formed by my wife is a physician here in San Diego. That company was formed by my wife's desire to help humanity. There was a different way to approach cancer that I came across in my discussions with some scientists that I knew. And this way was potentially, it had the potential to treat patients in a way that they don't get sick. You don't have side effects. You don't destroy their lives. Oncology, as almost all of you know, it doesn't just destroy you physically. The disease doesn't just destroy your body. You are emotionally destroyed. Your family is emotionally destroyed. In many cases, your family in the United States is financially devastated. It's an insidious disease. So the devastation this disease wreaks, along the way is horrible. And her desire, once I saw some of these things in what were being developed or ideas, her desire was to help humanity. And the example she used, she said, I want you to go out, figure out how to do this. And just like Jonas Salk. Now, Jonas Salk is, for all of you know, is the inventor of the polio vaccine, and he donated it to humanity. And the reason she used that example is the Salk Institute happens to be here in San Diego, where we live. And at that point, she happened to be the primary care doctor for a lot of the extended Salk family. So, and my wife is one of those individuals that wants to help people. So with that intent, Immunicom, all that intent ultimately led to Immunicom. So the passion to help people, the passion to make things better is what drives this company. But I can tell you this, it's hard. Innovation is hard because one of the things that you have to have, and this goes back to a little bit my religious upbringing. I'm a Muslim. I grew up here in the United States. You have to have a belief in the unseen. The foundation of innovation is you must believe in the unseen, because what you are about to innovate doesn't exist. And most likely, if it's a true innovation, not only does it not exist, in many cases, it goes against what people think. It actually is something that Most people won't even believe works even after you've created it. So you have to have a desire. You have to believe that in the unseen, that this thing that doesn't exist, this thing that nobody accepts right now, that it will work. Not only will it physically work if that's what the product is, if that's what the innovation is, but that it will actually help people. It will make things better. So it requires a lot of passion, as I mentioned, and it requires this belief in the unseen that it doesn't exist, but I believe it, and you see it through. The other thing that is a challenge in innovation is, you hear these stories, you hear these Hollywood phrases such as failure is not an option. Well, guess what? In innovation, failure is an option. Failure actually is required, because in order for you to innovate, you're going to fail. You're going to fail not once, not twice, you're going to fail multiple times. And you have to have the ability to pick yourself back up. And this is where the passion comes in. This is where the foundation of the passion and belief in this unseen that I'm going to get there comes in. And that failure, by the way, is not a failure, because from that you learn. And this comes down to my next point about how do you innovate. If you have an ego, and if you desire positive positive messaging and things of that nature, please don't innovate, because I can guarantee you every day that ego will be basically squashed to the ground. I'll give you an example. Our company right now has multiple clinical trials internationally. Our company has raised a significant amount of capital over time. We have received breakthrough technology designation from the FDA, which is exceedingly difficult. It's only given to a select number of companies, and almost in oncology, it's almost unheard of. We recently received our CE mark approval in Europe for triple negative breast cancer, which is a cancer that does not have a treatment. And we have some fairly prominent oncologists around the world conducting our trials, leaders in their respective countries, in Israel, in Poland, in Turkey. And so in spite of all this, I was talking to an investor, and we have a significant amount of scientific data, as you can imagine, and unbelievable data that we can demonstrate, and we have approvals. This person said to me, well, when you get to a point where you have real clinical trials in real hospitals in the United States, as if Europe and other countries have no bearing. So when you have that, when you have real hospitals doing your clinical trials and real data, then we can talk to you. Until before that, what you're working on is a science experiment. Now, I didn't realize that Sheba Medical Center in Israel, which is a top 10 medical center, is not considered a real medical center. I didn't realize that the University of Krakow and one of the largest oncology centers in Europe isn't considered a top medical center. But that's an example of people will put you down. That's an example that if I had an ego, I would have lost it on that call. But that's part of innovation. You will get those people who, a lot of them, who just don't see it. The Wright brothers, when they were working on the first airplane, they weren't known in the industry. And actually from the International Aeronautical Society in France, the head of that aeronautical society visited them and basically said, no, what you're working on is never going to work. Well, turned out to be the other way around. What they were working on did work, and what the world, the approach was taking was not going to lead to a successful outcome. At the end of the day, again, it comes down to the fact that you have to be willing to fail. You have to be flexible. You will hear people who do not believe in what you're doing. So you have to create a culture of, I believe in this, and then I will let the data speak for itself. And that's the other part. You cannot be blinded by just what you think is right. You have to let information and the environment around you dictate where you go. And many times where you start off is not where you end up. Yeah, even in the case of Immunicom, where we started scientifically with the product is not where we ended up. We ended up in a much better place. And this is usually what happens if you let information be your guide, not your ego, not what your beliefs are. And don't worry about. I mean, this is the next thing. Don't worry about how things are done. If you say, well, there is a process I must follow to do this. No, that's not true. Now, remember, I started this speech by saying, well, in healthcare, we're regulated. So we do have processes. Yes, we do. But those processes are about how we review a product and how we regulate a product, not how we get there. So the process you use to get from point A to point B to innovate, there are no rules. There's no such thing as, well, this must take 2 weeks. Oh, no, it must be done this way. That's not how innovation is done. So this is a mindset that, yes, you do need that mindset if you're once the product is innovated, then you start following processes to maintain the product, to make sure the product stays safe, to iterate. But to innovate a concept, an idea in the beginning, you can't. There's no such thing as rules or processes. And one of the key things is a challenge is when you start innovating, you get other ideas. As you are working, you're like, oh, wow, you know what? We can do this also. Oh, wow, I can do this also. And what winds up happening is you get distracted. And the next big shiny object comes along and you sit with somebody and they say, well, what you're working on is pretty good, but if you did this, wow, this would be even better. And this is where I see so many brilliant individuals never finish what they set out to do. They get distracted, they go off on tangents, and at the end of the day, what you wind up happening is you get nothing out of them. So the analogy I use is don't try to solve world hunger. And by that, what I mean is you're going to set out when you're innovating to solve a problem, to improve a situation, to change a circumstance. Stay focused on that. And if you do that successfully, then you'll get to the other problems. So don't go out there and try to solve world hunger. I ran an R&D group for a Fortune 20 healthcare technology company here in the United States, a $90 billion company. Then I headed the CTO office. I headed innovation in that company. I myself, I started my first company when I was 17 years old, went to my parents. I taught myself how to code as a programmer and said, hey, I want to buy this thing called an IBM XT. I got one floppy drive. That's all I could afford back then. And my parents loaned me the money, me and my friend, and we went out and started writing software. Didn't know how to do it. I mean, we didn't know how to write software. And the reason we did it actually was that I actually wanted to write Islamic software. I wanted to write software that took all the major religious texts and made it easy for somebody like me who was growing up in the United States, who didn't have access to the resources in the Muslim world, that I could educate myself on my religion. And that's why I went out and bought this computer and borrowed the money and started writing something that nobody had ever done and creating information connections that nobody had done on a computer before. And by the way, I was successful in doing it. It took a while. And it wound up being one of the top softwares in the world. Islamic software, over 1 million copies over 10 years, and was actually used in education systems around the world. But I'm not a scholar. So if you went by the rules, well, I'm not an Islamic scholar. Who am I to do this? And what I did was I took the work of scholars and I made it easy for people to educate themselves. Same thing in oncology. I'm not a doctor. I'm actually not even a PhD. Yet I have a company here that has an Immunicom that has a completely revolutionary approach on how therapeutics should be done, not only in oncology, but in every major disease category out there. You saw a video of our oncology product. We also have a product right now that's designed to work on antivirals. We have a product that's being designed to work on acute kidney disease and kidney injury. And so if you were to follow the rules, I should never be able to do anything that I've done in my career. But again, you can't follow the rules. If you're going to innovate, you can't. You have to believe, you have to have a passion. I'm repeating myself because it warrants repeating. You've got to believe in the unseen. and you just have to let leave your ego by the door, and you strive through all the adversity that you're going to have, because you are going to have a lot of adversity. And one of the hardest things to recognize in many cases is that your innovation, while it may be successful in what it's doing, may not be a successful business. Business success isn't guaranteed just because you created something really good. Business success comes from many different other avenues and sources. But in many cases, whatever innovation that you did that may not have been a business success, I guarantee you it's going to lay the foundation for another innovation to come along. The work that you did, or your group, or your company, will lay the foundation. Now, that's not much. It doesn't help your investors or your pocketbook. But in the end of the day, as human beings, as humanity, we evolve, we improve things together. We may fight each other, and which is all you see on the news. But on the background, in more cases than not, we are working with each other. We're helping each other. One individual makes a contribution, another individual picks up that contribution and say, oh, you know what? I can apply this contribution in a different manner. Immunicom, my company, is a perfect example. Many people, thousands of people over the years have made contributions to the body of science. We have been able to take those contributions, find a unique way to apply them, and then add a little bit of our own contribution. And our goal, again, which is what my wife's goal, is to help tens of millions of people for generations to come around the world. And that's, and if you can innovate, and if you can have that as your driving mandate, it doesn't matter what the adversity is. It doesn't matter what the challenges that you're going to face. You will have the ability to overcome all those things. So, with that, I'd like to thank everybody who's participating. If there are any questions,
I have a question, Amir. What, when you started, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to face? I mean, between raising money, between bringing on qualified partners, between just meeting the challenges that you didn't even expect that were going to confront you. What do you think was the biggest hurdle and the biggest achievement? Was it the FDA breakthrough? Was it the EU approval? I'd be curious to know.
The biggest hurdle, Ranzel, was getting up every morning and getting out of bed because everybody was around me was saying, "What are you doing? You're crazy," So that was the biggest hurdle, personally. No, but seriously, that is the biggest hurdle. Is you have to get others to believe in what you're doing, but you can't do it alone. Whether it be investors, whether it be your spouse, who's then got to put up with all this, and then you have to bring people in your company or your organization or whatever. Even if you're doing it in your garage, you have to have people who believe in. You have to convince them, hey, I'm not crazy. This is doable. So I will say that conviction and the ability to persuade others to see what you're seeing is one of the biggest challenges that any innovation process, whether it be in a company or an individual, has. Now, as far as our greatest accomplishment to date, honestly, it's not the FDA breakthrough. Our greatest accomplishment to date is the CE mark, the European approval we just got. Not because we got a CE mark, it's because we got it in the middle of COVID. That if you understand how a regulatory approval works, regulatory approvals work by auditors reviewing your data, auditors coming on site and doing not one, multiple auditors, and doing detailed analysis and audit of the information that you are submitting and presenting. Well, thanks to COVID, we couldn't do any of that. And so we had to come up with a very creative way, working with a notified body in Europe on how we do this and meet the the international standards and regulatory requirements. And I can tell you, in a 5-day period, we were able to design a system to do a virtual audit with them. And in that 5 days, we had 160 hours of audit, if you can fathom that. and basically having 2 or 3 hours of sleep every night. And so to be able to achieve something like that in the very difficult circumstances where the world was shutting down, this is right when the world was shutting down, and we knew very little about this insidious virus. And yet we had to pull through. We were too far along. We had to find a way, because initially the response was, you know what, come back in a year. Let's let this COVID thing be over and we'll come back in a year. Well, that wasn't going to work for our company.
And was there a COVID byproduct or outcome that Immunicom discovered in the process?
Yeah, we actually, as of 2 weeks ago, we actually do have a product. It's an oncology. It was a product that was being developed for oncology, and it has direct applicability to COVID. COVID patients who are critically ill, you read articles about their immune systems being overactive, called cytokine release syndrome, and some other situations like that, that are causing many of the severe cases and the mortalities in the patients and the progression of patients. So, what we do is our company actually filters out from the human patient, from the blood, immune molecules, proteins, soluble factors that cause diseases, contribute to diseases. Just so happens there's a correlation between some of the ones that we're working on for oncology and for COVID. So we had a breakthrough actually about 2 weeks ago, where we've been able to successfully pull out some of these target molecules that are hyperactivating the immune system in oncology patients, but also in COVID patients. And again, this is the part of innovation. We weren't looking to do that, but that's one of the byproducts of the work that we wound up doing.
Well, you're doing incredible work, and I'm very proud to be associated with Immunicom. And I would encourage anybody who wants to learn more about your company and more about you and what you've been doing to reach out to you, because I do believe that you've come across something that will benefit humanity and mankind. So you're very kind to share your time with us today. And again, thank you for all that you do to try and make it easier for all that suffer from some very horrible disease, both COVID and cancer. So wonderful. And again, thank you so much, Amir. You've been terrific.
Thank you, Ransel. Thank you, everybody.